The infamous spawn region on the oldest anarchy server in Minecraft has been completely transformed into a giant aquarium, filled to the brim with fish, vehicles, and other strange creations. Normally, builds like this at spawn would be destroyed instantly, but 42 builders came together to completely transform 2b2t's deadliest region, and how they did it is spectacular. Over the course of a month, they would stay underwater for hours to complete these works of art by hand. Not only were griefers attempting to destroy the builds, but thieves were constantly trying to steal some of the more precious blocks the structures were made of. It was a constant struggle to keep so many people organized, but the end result was nothing short of incredible. Today we'll cover the history of Project Spawnquarium, a movement to completely transform the server's most hostile region. We'll give a brief history, investigate the unique methods used, and also document the struggle as old as time, builders versus griefers. So how did the spawn ocean get filled to the brim with these structures, and how have they lasted so long? Well, I need to give you a little history lesson. For most of the server's lifespan, the spawn region at 00 was mostly a chaotic mess of cobblestone craters, withers, and floating blocks. But in 2020, a group called the Infinity Incursion took it upon themselves to transform the entire region into a giant water cube with over 250 million water source blocks. Its purpose was to cause new players joining the server to drown. It was an amazing achievement that was able to stand the test of time and multiple grief attempts. But as time went on, in 2021, a group called Team No Seas formed in hopes of eventually draining the spawn ocean using redstone machines. Naturally, players fought back, and there was a mini conflict between Team Seas and Team No Seas. Despite their best efforts and non-stop work, the griefers were only able to remove around 10% of it, and that's being generous. They quickly realized how hard it would be to remove the entire thing, so they eventually gave up and most of the damage was repaired. So ever since that event, it has been pretty much untouched, but in 2023, that would change. A group on the server called the Ancients took interest in the water cube. Now, unlike most groups on the server that have some sort of figurehead, the Ancients do not have centralized leadership, and instead, their council is guided by ideas and suggestions. One of their members, Yomoboyo, had an idea for a challenge. He had previously helped build a giant obsidian anglerfish underwater along with other players, and noticed that it hadn't been destroyed yet. What if they filled the entire water cube with builds like this one, turning it into a giant aquarium? The group thought the idea was crazy since creations at 2b2t's spawn usually are destroyed very quickly. However, they realized that the water could be used to their advantage. End crystals, which are the primary weapon on the server, cannot be placed underwater, which would also provide the builders with safety. And since 2b2t is still on Java version 1.12, the modern swimming mechanics aren't in play, which means slow movement would also discourage griefers. Plus, if they had enough people building at the same time, there would be safety in numbers. The Ancients decided it would be a worthy challenge, and so they gave the project the green light. It would be called Project Spawnquarium. The original plan was to make the event only a single weekend. The group had put on several server events in the past, so they quickly informed the community about their plan. In February of 2023, the event weekend kicked off. Builders showed up and began creating unique underwater structures. Griefers took one look at the water and instantly decided it would be a waste of time trying to grief anything beneath the surface. Despite half of the builders nearly drowning to death, the entire weekend was such a success that many asked for the event to be extended. A player named Rules Off took the helm of the project, and things became more ambitious. Builders began designing more sophisticated structures in single player that they would eventually want to bring to the server, but they would have to overcome some big challenges to make them a reality. First off, the water that was going to keep them safe would also prove to be difficult to work with. Due to the water cube's sheer size and the slow movement speeds, returning to the surface for air was not practical, and having to constantly eat god apples was a huge waste of resources, so water breathing potions would have to be mass produced for the builders. Inside one of the giant fish builds, a large brewing station was set up, and inside another, a fishing area was created, allowing the builders to gather pufferfish. Both of these areas combined allowed for the mass production of water breathing potions. That took care of the oxygen problem, but another issue was that many printer mods, which allow builds to be constructed automatically from blueprints, did not work properly underwater. So a large portion of the builds had to be done by hand, the old-fashioned way. And considering how large some of the free-floating structures were, it was quite impressive. Despite the initial setbacks, things were going smoothly. While they did have to deal with the occasional griefer, a larger issue surfaced. They had to deal with thieves. Some builds were made of highly valuable materials that scavengers wanted to get their hands on. If you were a new player, it would be hard to resist grabbing some of these resources. The builders had to keep an eye out for anyone trying to steal them. While they did have to chase people away, usually the water took care of the problem. The builders utilized an interactive map in order to keep tabs on the builds, and also scout empty areas for where to build new ones. It was important for them to stay organized, as more and more players were brought onto the project. The list of builders eventually grew to 42, with many being from different groups. Despite differences, they were all working together in harmony. The actual variety of the builds was insane. You had underwater creatures that fit the theme of an aquarium, realistic historical builds such as a World War II submarine, plenty of pop culture references, a lot of inside jokes within the community, and even some outlandish ones such as making every builder's head a different variety of pufferfish. By the end of March, over 100 structures were able to be built, some big, some small, some really small. It was one of the most ambitious and creative Spawn projects in many years. On March 28th, the group went public with their project, releasing tons of videos and screenshots of the aquarium, and inviting people to come see it for themselves. To celebrate, the group had a massive party at Spawn which included spleef matches, photo ops, and of course, some classic 2b2t's shenanigans. Now, you would think this is where the story ends and griefers come in to ruin everyone's day, but things played out a little differently. The ancients expected the aquarium to be the target of griefing groups now that they had the publicity in the community. But as Team No-Seas found out a few years previously, griefing the Spawn Ocean was more trouble than it was worth. It would essentially have to be done by hand instead of using traditional TNT, since water prevents almost all explosion damage. For over an entire month after the announcement, the Spawnquarium remained untouched, which for any creative project at Spawn is a massive deal. Builds here normally do not last long at all, which makes it all the more surprising it survived. In fact, as of this video being released, the Spawnquarium is still standing, and it's been finished for almost 2 months now, a massive achievement. The Spawn Ocean, which had originally been built to drown out new players, became a blank canvas for one of the most creative projects in 2b2t history. So how are the Ancients going to top this? Well, I guess we'll have to wait and see what happens. But if you enjoyed today's video, make sure to leave a like, hit that subscribe button, and follow my socials. Take it easy, Fit Fam, and stay alive out there.